To make sense out of the end of our gospel today, we must go back to Good Friday. And even if you weren't here then, allow me to paint the picture for you. On Good Friday, we heard from St. John's Passion. Jesus and Peter are in Jerusalem, in the courtyard of the high priest's house. It's dark. Peter is warming himself at an outdoor fire in that courtyard while Jesus is inside being interrogated. Contrast that scene in your mind with what we hear from the gospel today. Early in the morning, on the beach, Sea of Tiberias. Just hold those contrasting images in your head because we're going to switch back and forth. So Peter is warming himself at the fire, and a woman asks him, "Are you not also one of that man's disciples? Aren't you?" Peter says, "I am not." Today, the risen Jesus asks that same Peter, "Peter, do you love me?" Peter answers, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." Back to the dark courtyard. "Are you not one of his disciples?" Peter said, "I am not." Back to the morning beach scene. "Peter, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." Back to the dark garden. "Did I not see you in the garden with him?" Again, Peter denied it. The morning beach scene from today. "Do you love me?" Peter felt hurt because he said to him a third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep." Can you imagine the guilt and shame that Peter has been carrying with him since the crucifixion? And can you imagine the shame he felt when encountering the risen Lord, knowing that he had denied him 3 times? In his head, Peter may have even thought that his denials contributed to his crucifixion and death. The complicated, wounded Peter had returned to his fishing boat after Jesus was crucified. And isn't that what we all do when we are ashamed? We retreat to whatever is familiar and safe and comfortable for us. We run headlong towards something, anything that will help us feel competent and worthy again. Peter flees to his boat, his nets, and the vocation he had before he was called by Jesus. As if there is some time or place in his life where his shame is not, where his wound is not, where Jesus is not. What I find most searing and instructive in this story is the way that Jesus saves Peter by returning him to the source of his shame. He doesn't avoid the hard conversation. He doesn't pretend that Peter's denials didn't happen or didn't wound him. But neither does Jesus preach or condemn or accuse or retaliate. He loves and feeds. He feeds Peter's body and then he feeds Peter's soul. He surrounds this self-loathing disciple with tenderness and safety, inviting him to revisit his shame for the sake of healing, for the sake of restoration, for commissioning. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Feed and tend my sheep. He not only feeds Peter, but then he entrusts others to Peter's care. Wow. Jesus' appearance to Peter, like all of the post-resurrection appearances, speaks to us volumes about God's priorities. And my friends, they aren't ours. They don't seem to be the priorities of our country or our world today. In the days following the resurrection, Jesus doesn't waste a moment on revenge or retribution. He doesn't storm Pilate's house or avenge himself on Rome, nor does he punish the soldiers whose hands drove nails into his. Instead, he spends his remaining time on earth feeding, loving, restoring, and strengthening his friends. He calls Mary Magdalene by name, and she cries. He offers his wounds to the skeptical Thomas. He grills bread and fish on the beach for his hungry disciples. He heals what is wounded and festering between his heart and Peter's. In other words, Jesus focuses on relationship, on reconciliation, on love. He spends the last days before his ascension delivering his children from fear, delivering them from despair, delivering them from their self-hatred and their paralysis. He wastes no time on triumphalism or smugness. Even at the height of his power, he chooses humility. He chooses to linger on a lonely beach until dawn, waiting for his hungry children to realize how much they needed him. He chooses to ask Peter an honest question about denial, even though that answer might hurt. And he chooses to feed and tend his sheep. Peter's shame meets Jesus's grace, and Jesus's grace wins. That's the gospel story in a nutshell. That's it right there. As writer and research professor Brené Brown puts it, shame cannot survive being spoken, meaning shame cannot survive the living word. Shame cannot tolerate resurrection. And when shame encounters the God who is love, it burns to ash and scatters.